Contemporary art skyrocketed to the mainstream tastes in the 1980s. This was a time of artists glamorizing edginess and stepping further beyond the modern art that came before it. Hello, I am Sarah D, and today I'm going to tell you about an influential and often forgotten contemporary artist, R.C. Gorman. I will also be reproducing his piece, Chama. This piece was a crazy challenge for me because the background is a gradient and I have little to no experience creating a gradient with acrylic paint, and it's very difficult with acrylic paint because acrylic paint is well known to dry very fast, and in order to create a gradient you have to blend things together. So I did put it off for probably about a month because I was so scared to try, and then I did try and it didn't turn out great, so I gave up for like a week until I finally hit a point where I was like, okay, I just need to do this. I'm just gonna do it and see how it turns out. And it didn't turn out great the first time I tried in this video, but I went with it and tried again, and it turned out great, I think, in my opinion. So at first I tried this gradient with paintbrushes, which is how I was taught on a video that I watched, but I didn't add enough paint, so I tried it again with a roller, which is a recent addition to my tool collection. So yeah, that was interesting. I could tell immediately that it wasn't doing what I was wanting it to because I messed it up right from the start. Quote unquote messed it up. But then I decided to just keep going because I was having a lot of fun experimenting and figuring out how to use this roller and what it looks like on this paper. It's very satisfying to me. It looks very soft to me. And so I really liked it, and so I just kept going and just chilling. And honestly, I feel like R.C. Gorman would have appreciated this being under a quote-unquote reproduction of his, because he was all about experimentation and figuring it out as you go and just having fun with your artwork. So we go with this paint rolling and just having fun on the canvas to actually creating the gradient. I watched a different video and did a lot better the second time around. But let's start talking about R.C. Gorman. R.C. Gorman was born Rudolph Carl Gorman on July 26, 1931 in Chinle, Arizona in the Navajo Nation. He grew up drawing Shirley Temple and Mickey Mouse, spurred on by his grandmother. She raised him, telling him stories about their ancestry of artists. Gorman credited one of his teachers in high school, Jenny Lind, with encouraging him and inspiring him to pursue art as a career. After high school, he served in the Navy, where he actually sold commissioned works of his peers' girlfriends. This gave him important real-life experience in painting from photos and selling his works. And it gave him a really good idea of what it's like selling your artworks as an artist and promoting yourself, and he really, really loved promoting himself. It's a big skill to learn and to have as an artist because it's the only way that you are going to sell your works and hopefully live off of your works if that's what you want to do. This piece does go through quite a few ugly phases. But if you're an artist or a painter yourself, well, I guess any kind of art, you know that there's always an ugly phase. And I mean, Sometimes you get to that ugly phase and you're like, God, what am I doing? Am I wasting my time? Should I just quit and start over? But, I mean, if you're an experienced artist, you know already, do not. Just keep going. Just keep figuring it out. Like, sometimes it's okay to quit. Like, I tried to do this reproduction about a month ago, and it turned out so badly that I just, like, couldn't continue with it. But with this time, you know, I just kept going, and it turned out pretty great at the end, I think. After the Navy, the Navajo Nation scholarshiped R.C. Gorman to go to college in Mexico. There, he was heavily influenced and inspired by Orozco, Rivera, Siqueiros, and Tamayo. He was inspired by their free, unbound personalities and careers. He was the same and loved to experiment all the time. According to his biographer, Virginia Dooley, he, quote, created a unique technique on accident when he was running late to class and cleaned his brushes on butcher paper he drew on with a grease pencil. When he worked on the oily paper, the partially dissolved pencil grease created a washed or gradient effect. R.C. Gorman developed and refined this technique using turpentine to add color. After college, R.C. Gorman moved to San Francisco to be an artist. He felt like that was the place to be. He established his first studio and lived the starving artist life. He created works prolifically at this time, but had to have other work to supplement his income, such as he actually modeled for other artists. He was a live model for other artists in San Francisco at the time. Now here is where I feel like the gradient really came together, is when I grabbed that big brush. I think I wetted it a little bit, or it was wet from when I tried to create this piece earlier. And I mean, look at that. That looks so much better than it did before. It's not a perfect gradient, and I definitely think that I should try to create gradients more often. But I mean, the big brush really did a lot for this. Another thing I want to say about this is I'm really sorry for how much the paper moves. I'm really sorry. It was a mistake to not tape the paper down. But you know what? With this one, I was just wild and free. I had an hour to create this. So I just went with whatever was happening. I was also watching Ghost Whisperer at the time, so I was like really just chilling. I was just like in free art mode, doing whatever I felt like doing. And honestly, that's probably what made the piece better. That's probably it. Within his time in San Francisco, he took part in more than a dozen one-man exhibitions and two-man exhibitions with his father, Carl N. Gorman. Gorman would regularly compete in native art competitions, often placing first in painting and drawing. In 1967, R.C. Gorman competed in the American Indian Heritage Art Exhibition in Oklahoma City. His oil painting Desert Mother won first place. Another entry of his was a lithograph that was titled Navajo Mother in Supplication, and that placed second. He entered a third piece, and when he learned how the other two pieces placed, reportedly said, "What happened to the last one?" He was very confident in his works, which is something that I really appreciate about him, is that he was so unapologetic about everything that he did. And that is just the way to live. At this point, I'm drawing the line art for this piece. It's very important to draw this out beforehand. I used pencil because it felt a little less permanent, which contributed to my confidence with the lines. I do like to draw in pencil for the first draft. Going back to 1964, Gorman visited the town of Taos, New Mexico, which would be his home for the next 30 years. He went and found a local gallery where he showed the owner his works. The owner was impressed and invited Gorman to show at his gallery in 1965. The show sold out, and he was invited to show again in 1966 and 1977, both of which sold out as well. I feel like that really goes to show how much people loved his works at the time. And I mean, even now his works are collected, but he created such beautiful works that were so like calming, and most of them were very peaceful and beautiful, and people just loved to have his works in their house. They loved decorating their homes with his works. Okay, it is time. Take a sip of confidence. We must add the black paint line art to this work. I'm adding this mostly so that I have a solid line to look at when I'm painting the colors, and then later I will touch up this line just so that it's more clear. But I do think it's important to have this line now at the beginning so that you know where you're going and so you don't go over where you should be. 1968 marked the Navajo tribe's centennial year when Navajo people celebrated the long walk from captivity at Bosque Redondo. This large event brought the Navajo people into the spotlight, particularly R.C. Gorman. Gorman painted a commemorative painting which won him numerous awards. Late that year, the owner of the gallery in Taos put the gallery up for sale, and R.C. Gorman took the opportunity and bought it up right away. He named his gallery the R.C. Gorman Navajo Gallery. It is the first native-owned gallery in the U.S. And it's still standing today. This was really fun to paint at this point where I'm filling in her hair. Beautiful. Love it. R.C. Gorman actually lived and worked in the gallery. The walls were filled ceiling to floor with local natives' artworks. In 1969, Gorman hosted his first group exhibition in his gallery with 55 artists showing. The show was a success, as you can imagine. But over time, as other artists sold their works and Gorman created very often, prolifically, the gallery was eventually only showing Gorman's works. R.C. Gorman loved to host parties and other social gatherings at his gallery. His gallery was run very loosely and would only be open when he was available. When a patron would walk in, they might find Gorman at his easel and a live model posing for him. He felt that using live models brought his work to life. Which I love. That's very classic of him. Very classic art of him. And he did mostly paint Navajo women. I hesitate to say only because I don't think I've seen all of his works, but he mostly paints Navajo women. So he did hire local Navajo women to be his live models, and he would always have them in his home and his gallery. When Gorman would approach a patron or a patron would approach him, they would be instantly enraptured by his easygoing nature and his charm. He was very charismatic, and people just naturally gravitated to him and loved him. Going in with white at this point was also so fun. It feels very satisfying to solidify the shape that's happening, the subject, with the white. But then it's also very important to put the white in there because we have other colors going on later, and having a white base makes those other colors pop because those other colors are also very light, and we have some dark colors in this gradient, so we need to let it pop. In 1972, Gorman decided to show 6 female artists that he grew very close with, and titled the exhibition Ms. 6. He had a lot of exhibitions like that where it was friends, people that inspired him locally. He had a showing where it was just his paintings that were based on the women that he loved near him. And he just really enjoyed giving people exposure. He knew how important it was as an artist to have your works shown and promoted by local people, and he used his recognition to bring recognition to other artists. Really goes to show just how caring he was as a person. 1973 was a very big year for R.C. Gorman. He did a lot of notable things. Early in the year, he had Hopi artist Dan Namingha do his first exhibition, and Gorman actually invited Namingha back for 2 more years because they were so successful. Gorman exhibited with Fritz Scholder, another prominently known Native artist, at the Museum of New Mexico in Santa Fe. Gorman was included in an exhibit at the Metropolitan Museum in New York titled Masterworks from the Museum of the American Indian. The Met bought both drawings that Gorman produced and called him the Picasso of American Indian art. In the following years, Gorman showed at least a dozen times in one-man shows every year. After the Met recognized Gorman, Hollywood followed suit, and Gorman had many celebrities making the trek up to Taos. In 1976, PBS filmed a docuseries about Native artists and honored R.C. Gorman in it, awarding him even more recognition. Once people saw and met his flamboyant charm, they couldn't help but love him. In 1978, R.C. Gorman was invited by Mr. and Mrs. Walter Mondale in honor of the American contemporary artist. It's there that he met Andy Warhol, who he eventually, that same year, exhibited with in a spectacularly successful show. They would become friends who collected each other's works and knew each other the rest of their lives. As the years went on, R.C. Gorman created mostly lithographs, which are a complicated multi-step print using stone slabs or prepared metal plates. But like I said before, Gorman didn't like adhering to a standard, so he experimented with paper casts, ceramics, silk screens, and tapestries, and later brass statues. And he was just always creating and showing his works and making art accessible to the everyman. He loved selling his works, and he loved selling versions of his works that were like lower in cost so that everybody could enjoy his works. Everybody had access to his works. Now, soon I'm about to paint this lovely lady's face white, and I want you to know it's very useful to me to paint the whole face white because she had a lot of fine features, and it was just easier to do it this way. That way I would have a completely even base coat to go off of, and I could see the black underneath it anyway because white is a very translucent paint. Same situation with the fingers too. I know they look kind of wonky, but again, I could see the definition underneath, and later it looks a lot better, I promise. Ooh. As you can see, I got some white on the side there, and I try to fix it up. It doesn't look perfect, but honestly, I feel like I did a really good job covering it up in total. I'm usually really bad at color matching, but I feel like I did a really good job, especially looking at the finished piece. You can barely tell. You can kind of tell, but I'm giving myself the credit, I guess. I loved painting the orange onto this piece. It was so fun because the orange is so vibrant and it's such a beautiful contrast to the blue and the white. It was just really, really fun, and I can't say anything more than it was fun. January 8th, 1979 was dedicated as R.C. Gorman Day in Taos, New Mexico. He was honored with all-day celebrations and storytelling about himself. Nearing the end of the day, the mayor of Taos, Phil Lovato, honored R.C. Gorman with a toast. Quote, R.C. Gorman is an example of the spirit of Taos, which attracts artists. There seems to be something about Taos that has for many years attracted the arts and artists. We have before us a living example, the man we honor today. Unquote. Again, another perfect example of how beloved R.C. Gorman was in his community and how prominent he was in his community. And he was just very important to everybody in Taos, and everybody that knew him really loved him and appreciated him in their lives. It was no secret around Taos that R.C. Gorman was a successful, eclectic, and eccentric artist. So when he decided to buy a bigger house and immediately got to work remodeling, no one was surprised. His flamboyant personality shone through his extravagant renovation of his new house with its ballroom-sized studio, Olympic-length pool, a guest house, a library, a wider living room, and a Japanese sculpture garden. His walls were filled top to toe with artworks ranging from local kitsch to literal Picasso. And that's a perfect way to be as an artist too. It's like a perfect example of how he wasn't super stuffy or, staunch, or it's just that he was able to respect art for what it was and not by the name of the person who created it. And I feel like that's true appreciation. During Gorman's career, he traveled very often. A trip to Japan inspired a pair of wooden blocks known to collectors as, quote, little jewels. Numerous tours, exhibitions, and printing projects brought him through France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. During those trips, of course, his international clientele grew. He was so good at increasing his client base and getting himself out there and talking to people and getting them to like him, which I don't know where he got that confidence, but I need some of that in my life so badly, as does I'm sure anybody else. I bet even Andy Warhol was like, how do you do that? Oh, I also want to say that his life sounded so glamorous. He met and knew celebrities. He was traveling all the time. He actually loved traveling all the time. And he made so much money off of his works. He was not only in the higher arts community, he was also just in local market communities, which is just so awesome. It's the perfect example of being successful as an artist to me, in my opinion. In the 1980s, large format print books of R.C. Gorman's works brought him even more recognition. Once again, everybody had his books, everybody knew who he was, they had his books on their coffee tables, and neighbors, loved ones come over, they see that book, they're like, I love this guy, they find him, they go to his beautiful gallery or his beautiful house, get invited over for dinner, and they buy a piece of his. It was just like that. He was just so able to entrance people, to bring them into his life, and that's what brought him his success. Ooh, it's time to put the skin color in. Yet another one of my favorite parts. Look at that. That was so satisfying. Just swoop color. Beautiful. In 1985, Gorman experienced some health issues with his stomach that actually kept him grounded until the next year. He had a whole year of not being able to travel, and he was itching to leave. So in 1986, when he was fully recuperated, he kept touring. He immediately went touring again. In the spring of that year, he was awarded Harvard University's Humanitarian Award. This award prompted R.C. Gorman to establish a scholarship for students of Native or Hispanic descent with the Taos High School, yet again creating more opportunities for his local peers, his local people. Yay, I'm coloring in the face! It's time! She's gonna look human now. I'm very happy. I also love how when you're painting people's faces, how you can just add like 2 to 4 colors on it and they look human, like right away. You have like this kind of phase where it's like that is just a blob, and then you add those other colors and it's like, wow, you have beautiful cheekbones and your bone structure is there. That same year, 1986, the Navajo Gallery would start hosting an annual Indian market exhibition instead of the big market that regularly occurs in Santa Fe. This Indian market exhibition still occurs, but on this Thursday before the Santa Fe exhibition to catch the traffic going through Taos on that day. Other galleries in Taos join the Navajo Gallery in this market, and now it's a pretty big event that happens every year. It is time again for another sippy of confidence before I add the line work and fix the line work, but add the line work to the face and hands. It was so scary to me. In 1995, R.C. Gorman honored his father, Carl Gorman, and the Navajo code talkers of World War II by sculpting a bronze statue of his father. Carl Gorman served in World War II in a secret division of the Marine Corps of 29 Navajos who coded the Navajo language, which was then unwritten, to relay important messages without worry of spies. Japan never broke the code due to the complexities of the Navajo language. The bronze statue that was created was honored on Veterans Day and donated to the Northern University of Flagstaff, Arizona. R.C. Gorman was notably very proud of this work and very proud of his father's accomplishments. In 2003, R.C. Gorman donated his library collection to the Dene College. He also donated the funds to have a room built for the books that is often also used for lectures and exhibits. In November of 2005, after a long hospital stay for pneumonia and a blood infection, R.C. Gorman passed away at age 74. Flags in New Mexico were flown at half-staff in remembrance. R.C. Gorman is an artist one shouldn't forget. An openly queer Native person who made his life art, he surrounded himself with art and good company. He was beloved in his community, and he deserved the devotion. He was so amazing. From just the little stuff that I learned about him, which didn't cover a lot of his life in the first place, I can tell that he was such a beautiful human being. I just think that he was so amazing, and I'm so surprised that I never heard of him before researching this video, and I feel like I just feel so much respect to him, and my dad lives down where his museum is, and I just feel like I've got to go and see it. Gotta go check it out at some point. I'd love to see his works in person. I love this moment of me adding these darker colors and shadows to her face and her fingers. I feel like it adds a lot of important dimension, and I really love it. Oops, I accidentally gave her a little tear. I'll wipe that away for you, girl. There you go. I also really appreciate the little whites in her eyes as well. I feel like once you get to this point in painting, it's just so satisfying and fun, and it feels like the character is really coming together. It's very satisfying as an artist to witness. I feel like her expression here is so mysterious. It's very hard to tell whether she's upset or she's happy, and it's an interesting part about this piece. This is another example of like adding little color that really brings the human face together. Like this point where I'm scrubbing this color over her face, it evens everything out so perfectly, and it's so satisfying to watch. I'm like transfixed right now. Ooh, dang, that's so smooth. Alright, here's a slow look at what she looks like. She's almost done, but I spotted a little imperfection, so I'm gonna fix that real quick. Just a little line to fix it up. And there's some down here that I'd like to look a little better. But that's it. She's all finished. Thank you so much for learning about R.C. Gorman with me.
Since I'm one of the more common people, I'm very glad that my own work's available to me also.
You can afford to keep some around the house.
I can afford to sprinkle some about my little place up there.
Thank you so much for watching this video all the way through. Please give it a like if you enjoyed it. If you like me and my content, please consider subscribing to this channel. If you like me and you like video games, go check out me and my partner's gaming channel. The link will be in the comments. We'll see you next time. Bye!